Last Count Corla, we knew facing into this budget that we face an unprecedented series of crises in the cost of living, in energy security and in housing, described as a disaster by our President, Anu Tuthran. We knew that increasing numbers of households are already facing stark choices between heating and eating, and that up to half of households are likely to be in energy poverty during the bleak winter ahead. Right now, we know that Ireland is just not working for far too many individuals, families, households and businesses. Of course, the crises we face, and we acknowledge this, have been exacerbated deeply by Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine and by international factors. But many of the measures urgently needed to address the crises and support communities are within the power of this government at national level. So this week, we needed government to step forward with a radical budget of the scale and ambition to address the really severe levels of hardship being faced by communities across the country. Just as we saw urgent, ambitious and radical state-led measures rolled out to get us through the COVID pandemic, and we've acknowledged that, so too we needed to see government this week adopt similarly urgent, ambitious and radical measures in the budget. And in our Labour alternative budget, published last week, we put forward a clear and costed set of measures to support the building of an Ireland that would work for us all. Our budget proposals represent a creative and radical plan, a genuine pathway to ensure a more equal Ireland. Yesterday presented the government with an opportunity to move towards that vision of Ireland, a more equal Ireland, an Ireland that works, an opportunity to provide a lifeline to the tens of thousands of people for whom this country is currently not working. But unfortunately, it was an opportunity missed. This was not a budget to provide the necessary pathway or track forward to ensure that households and communities would be adequately supported through this winter and beyond. Instead of providing that positive pathway forward, this might better be described, as I've said, as a treadmill budget, a budget in which the government are spending money to stand still, not to ensure any future progress or prosperity. Lots of money put forward for once-off measures, for short-term measures, but no sense of forward momentum or progressive movement. No sense that this budget will do anything other than provide a short-term quick fix, a sugar hit, which will wear off very quickly and likely before the new year. And indeed, the signs are, as my colleague Deputy Jed Nash has said, that we may well have to have another budget in the new year once those short-term measures have faded away. And I think the Taoiseach this morning effectively acknowledged that in speaking with the media. With the cost of living crisis biting deeply, indeed, many people already feel they are on that treadmill, that they are running simply to stand still, that they cannot see a future of prosperity for them or for their children. And this budget will not change that. It was simply not good enough to throw money in a short-term way at the crises, like snuff it awake, as Jed Nash has said. This was a short-term Bertonomics approach, as Duncan Smith pointed out, an approach that will do little for the have-nots, while boosting the position of those who already have lots. What we needed was a clear plan to take us through the winter and beyond, a plan with ambition and vision, and that was sadly lacking in the package of measures announced yesterday. This has been recognised by many, and one response I got from a constituent today, I think accurately reflects public reaction. She said, "This winter, I will have to choose between eating properly or taking the edge off the cold in my home. I will stay in bed to stay warm. I am a worker, a grafter, but I have not been helped in any way by this budget." And her reaction, Last Count Corliffe, reflects the reality for so many. Yet a different approach was possible. As I said, the government could have adopted the approach we took in our Labour budget last week. We proposed a costed programme with both a set of immediate cost of living measures and a series of longer-term plans to improve public services and protect communities from market insecurities. Because we know that it is households and communities which are suffering currently and which need to be protected and sheltered from harm. And we had clear plans to protect and support communities across housing, across care, across climate and across work. On housing, we called for an eviction ban and a rent freeze. These should have been key features of any housing measures announced by government. In an Ireland that works for all, massive investment would have been put in place to ramp up provision of affordable and secure homes. Instead, the tax credit for renters announced shows just how divorced Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are from the lived reality of renters. because rents are out of control in this country. Renters are paying an average of €24,000 annually in rent payments. In my own constituency, in Dublin Bay South, also Minister Ryan's constituency, this is a particularly serious problem. We have more than double the national average of people renting in my constituency. 44% of households reliant on private rented accommodation for their homes. And yet average rents in our area, more than €2,000 per month. So for my constituents who are renting, a €500 tax credit is a drop in the ocean. As Threshold have put it, just 7 days' rent for any of them. So the speculative housing market has a hidden human and social cost of insecurity that we cannot afford. And renters cannot continue to pay the price for the wasted years of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil governments. The state needs to step in, freeze rents, ban evictions and commit to building more affordable homes. And it's particularly disappointing to see the failure in this budget to provide for any real increase for the building of social housing. Social Justice Ireland said another €1.4 billion was needed. That's what we allocated in our budget. But with construction inflation at 14%, the extra capital allocated by the government fell far short of that, which means there will be less social and affordable homes built next year than last year. And we called for 20,000 social and affordable homes to be built next year, homes which desperately need to be built. Another disappointment in the budget on housing is the lack of provision for households affected by construction defects. And this summer in the Dáil, I raised with the Taoiseach the shocking bills facing people who are living in defective Celtic-era apartments, many of them in my own area and across Dublin and beyond. I was heartened then to hear you say, Taoiseach, that the government would have plans to provide redress for households. And I welcome that announcement. But there's little substance in the proposals brought forward this week, and we await hearing further what is going to be done for those facing massive bills to address the defects, the fire safety and other defects brought about in their apartments through no fault of their own. What we saw government propose is a levy on concrete products to raise only €80 million a year and likely to increase the cost of homes for buyers in a housing crisis. Our alternative proposal was a levy on construction profits that would not have had that effect and could have really ensured adequate redress for so many apartment owners. The government proposal symptomises the inability to deal effectively with the housing crisis that has paralysed the lives of so many people and destroyed the hopes and aspirations, in particular, of our younger generations. On care, we in Labour brought forward 2 proposals to give immediate relief to hard-pressed families. The immediate extension of free GP care to every child and young person under 18 at a cost of €100 million was one such proposal. We believe that no parent should have to worry about cost when their child is sick. And we know that Ireland is the only country in Western Europe without universal access to GPs. And yet, for 4 wasted years, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have failed to use Ireland's hard-won prosperity to introduce free at point of access primary health care. Last year's budget did commit to a welcome extension of the current scheme, and it's also welcome to see that that has now finally been done for 6- and 7-year-old children in a recycled announcement made yesterday by Minister McGrath. But we should have seen free GP care extended to all children, and that didn't happen yesterday, and it's a real shame. And indeed, the measures introduced and announced on childcare were equally underwhelming. The government say they will fund a reduction, it's actually up to 25% in weekly fees for those availing of the National Childcare Scheme. But the proposed reduction will not amount to that level of reduction for most families. Even with the new announcement, a parent in my constituency will still have to pay approximately €250 per week per child. By contrast, under our Labour proposal, we would have capped childcare fees at €200 per month. That is only €50 per week, a cost in line with childcare fees in other European countries. A radical and ambitious move which would have cost the Exchequer €275 million over 12 months, value for money and an investment in our children's future. In our Equal Early Years campaign, Labour and Labour women have consistently called for us to go longer term for a guaranteed, publicly funded preschool place for every child. Because parents need affordable, accessible childcare. Early years educators deserve decent pay and conditions, and providers deserve support. But most of all, our children deserve an equal start. So to realise that bigger vision for childcare, we would have invested €60 million next year to provide a clear pathway going forward toward a universal, publicly funded childcare system on a par with other European countries. And we saw nothing of that level of ambition or vision in this year's government budget. On climate, we saw again a lack of vision and ambition, a lack of any new initiative. Our fiscal budgets must always be seen through the lens of the climate emergency. And we know that urgent action is needed to ensure a just transition to a clean, green, net zero economy. But to do that, we needed real and radical action in the budget, and it didn't happen. By contrast, we in Labour had made a flagship proposal for a €9 monthly climate ticket for unlimited journeys countrywide on public transport at a cost of €300 million for a 6-month period, similar to the scheme trialled in Germany this year, which saved 1.8 million tonnes of CO2 emissions in 3 months, and which is now being adapted across different German regional authorities. We in Labour also proposed a range of innovative measures to protect families and workers from rising energy prices and to move us towards a greener future. We proposed a doubling of the grant available to fit solar panels in houses from €2,400 to €5,000. We proposed an ambitious cycle to school scheme to enable parents to buy bikes for children, and a creative scheme to incentivise the scrapping of old cars in exchange for e-bikes. And last count, Corla, we would have imposed a 30% windfall tax on energy companies, many of which we know are raking in record profits. Instead, the government appear to have rejected that and proposed a very disappointing wait-and-see approach. And they don't seem to have taken on board the very sensible proposal about nationalising the Corrib field to ensure greater security and greater certainty of energy prices. So it's a very disappointing budget on climate. Not good enough for the young people who demonstrate every week with Fridays for Future, who want system change, not climate change, but certainly won't be getting it this year. Finally, on work, again, this is a deeply disappointing budget, which has failed to address the real concerns of so many in our low-pay, high-cost economy. Stagnating wages, rising cost of living and an energy crisis leading to job insecurity means that many young people are now fearful about staying in this country. They are emigrating elsewhere. They are bringing their skills and talents abroad and depriving communities here of their contribution because they cannot see a future in which they can aspire to own their own homes. And that's just not good enough. Ours should be a society where low pay is really addressed, where a future is provided for young people. But that's not the case right now, and it's certainly not the case judging by the contents of Budget 2023. We had a unique opportunity in this budget to build better jobs, to build a programme of jobs for good and develop a just transition to a fairer, greener future. Instead, what we see is a derisory increase in the minimum wage, a programme of tax cuts that patently offers disproportionate benefits to those on higher incomes, and an inadequate increase of only €12 per week for those on pensions and social welfare, well below the increase that we in Labour had proposed of €20. Last count, Corla, the government had a clear set of questions to answer in yesterday's budget. Will it work to keep people warm in their own homes, to stop low and middle income households from going under, to support people and businesses struggling to pay energy bills, to support those who cannot afford rent or mortgage payments, and to keep the lights on this winter? I am sad to say that looking at what is provided in this budget, it appears as though Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have failed those tests. A budget should draw a big picture for Ireland, particularly at this time of crisis. It should be ambitious and it should show vision. But yesterday we saw no ambition and no vision. Instead, we saw a conservatism that sees every aspect of public spending as a cost rather than an investment. Yes, there were welcome measures to reduce costs for households and businesses in yesterday's budget, and there was an important acknowledgement that supports are needed. But at its heart, this was not a budget that provides equality. This was not a budget that would ensure the building of an Ireland that works for all. By contrast, a Labour budget would have sought to achieve real equality, to provide safe and secure homes for everyone, to create quality, well-paid jobs that move us towards a green economy and a cleaner environment, to reform taxation, to prioritise fairness and redistribution, and to fund a health and care system for children, for our older people, and for everyone in between. That's the Ireland that Labour wants to see, that we are building for, and that's an Ireland that would work for us all. Ramaga.